Welcome to another edition of The Catholic View for Women, where we give you the news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. And we're joined, as always, by my co-host, Janet Morana, and also Astrid Bennett Gutierrez. Okay, ladies, and ladies out there in the audience, how many of us, growing up, at one point or another, were put on the birth control pill because our doctors told us that it was the be-all and end-all and would solve every problem in our lives medically?
Well, you know, I can remember very clearly when I was in high school, I had severe periods. I mean, we're talking about almost where I had to stay out of school.
Same thing.
Because I was bleeding so profusely, I couldn't even leave the bathroom, and pain. So my mother took me to her Catholic OBGYN, delivered my brothers and sisters, and and you would think you'd get some good advice. And what did he do? Even though I was not sexually active at all, he put me on the birth control pill because he told my mom, this will take care of Janet's problems. Well, I guess it might have helped for a little while, but really what it did was it masked over the problems. It really didn't solve it. And if I went off the pill, back came the heavy periods and the cramping and the severe cramping. I'm not talking about like a minor cramps.
No, I know, because I had the same thing, and they did the same thing to me, right?
You know, and really it's doing a great injustice to us, because what they were doing was they weren't being good doctors. They were scripting us instead of looking to see what was going on with our bodies. And what did we need to know more about our bodies, so that we didn't have to be on the pill, but a more natural approach to dealing with what was going wrong, you know?
Yeah, it's very scary to me, because what a lot of women don't even realize, even though some of the bad news is on the packaging of the birth control pill, they don't know how dangerous it is.
That's right.
And let's just start with that, in terms of the World Health Organization declaring it a Group 1 carcinogen many years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, and this teaching, I mean, obviously, the Church is not against birth regulation, but it is against the pill and artificial forms of contraceptives. Now, we're talking about the physical risks. I mean, there's so many, just seeing the package. But a lot of Catholics don't know that this is against Church teaching because of how bad it is for your body, primarily because it's something that it comes between, you know, the husband and the wife. So this pill is such bad news for women. It's not the great liberator. In fact, it's created so many health problems. So, you know,
it's
someone
kind of
like
sexist, isn't it?
Yeah.
They don't have a pill like that for men.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But, you know, another health problem, in addition to heavy periods, and I know this, you know, we get a lot of viewer response on this subject, and they ask for help. It's a tragic story, but very often doctors, again, for acne, believe it or not, are putting young girls on nowadays.
That's one of the questions that comes into the show a lot, about the skin problems.
And they put them on. And recently, Teresa and I were at a conference, and we gave a talk about all this. And at the lunch break, a woman came up to us whose daughter, her friend's daughter, was put on Yasmin for acne. And again, she wasn't sexually active, but she was away at school. And she called her mom and said, "Mom, my face is all breaking up, and the campus doctor wants to put me on Yasmin. Is that okay? I'm not sexually active. I don't even have a boyfriend." And the mother, having had severe acne herself, said to her daughter, "Well, you know what? As long as, you know, you're not using it for the birth control reasons, then it's okay, I guess, to treat your acne." She took it for 3 months. And within 3 months, she suffered a massive stroke, ended up in a hospital, and she ended up bedridden and in a coma. And 5 years later, she passed away. She just passed away in 2014 from Yasmin. And of course, that particular pill that they're giving out rampantly has caused death, strokes, and things goes. There's like over 1,800 lawsuits have been settled with the Bayer pharmaceutical company, and yet that keeps being given out by doctors every day to even good Catholic girls for treating acne, heavy periods, and so on. And what we're going to talk about in this episode is a better way, a better answer.
Right. That's why we're calling it "The Pill Is Not the Answer: Real Help for Women's Reproductive Health."
That's right. And recently, you know, Dr. Thomas Hilgers, who most of our viewers are familiar with his work at the Pope Paul VI Institute out in Omaha, Nebraska, he has been really a gift, I think, to women, to our health. And most people think of him because of NFP. But in particular, he's developed a thing called
NFP, or the infertility issue. They think of him. Right.
But he's also explored what he calls NaproTechnology, which deals with infertility issues, but it also deals with the women's reproductive whole system and how to treat things that are going wrong.
How to really treat them.
Really treat them.
Because you were mentioning that the pill is just masking the problems in a woman's body.
You know.
Right.
And Dr. Hilgers came out originally with a textbook on NaproTechnology that was kind of like heavy for doctors only.
Yeah.
But then a short time ago, he did a new version of it called the NaproTechnology Revolution, and he was on Raymond Arroyo's show discussing his new book. And I think Teresa,
Right, we have a clip. It's actually from, as you mentioned, the world over, an interview Raymond Arroyo did right here on EWTN, and it was for the release of his new book, which Janet, you just mentioned. That book was entitled The NaproTechnology Revolution, written for the average person, so something that you and I could pick up as opposed to maybe thinking you're picking up a medical textbook. And this is something I think is really important for us to hear regarding a real look at women's health, as opposed to masking the issues. What does an expert, who really, he is on the cutting edge of all this stuff, whether it's infertility, whether it's other issues with women, and he has the answer for us in terms of understanding how our bodies work the way God designed us. Let's take a listen.
First of all, what is the biggest challenge you face when you're dealing with couples who come to you, particularly women, who are experiencing problems with infertility? What is the #1 reason for this?
Well, it isn't one reason, actually. Infertility is usually the result of multiple things going wrong. And so the biggest challenge is to find out what all of the problems are. For example, they may have endometriosis, which is a condition where the cells get into this abdominal cavity. They don't belong there. They could have hormonal problems, ovulation-related problems, all of these things together all at the same time. So the biggest challenge is to find out what all of those are. Now, in the last 30 years or so of our research, we have found a lot of them. We still haven't found them all yet. So when we get to finding them all, we'll have a cure for infertility, I think.
Yeah. Now, many doctors obviously don't take your approach. When we were speaking earlier, you spoke of medical abandonment. Yeah. What is that?
Well, you just can't imagine the number of women who go to their obstetrician gynecologist with a particular problem, and the gynecologist either puts them off, doesn't have a solution, doesn't care about the solution, doesn't care about looking into it, or puts them on birth control pills, which doesn't treat anything.
To mask the symptoms.
To mask the symptoms, that's right. And so this is very common practice in the United States, and you ask, why does it happen? Well, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists is viciously pro-abortion and pro-contraception, pro-tubal ligation, and pro-IVF, in vitro fertilization. So the whole profession is generated or guided by that organization.
There are people looking in who consider it pro-life. They want to have children. These couples have tried, and they're going down this in vitro track. I know people who sat there and injected themselves, and the church obviously teaches against in vitro fertilization. Why? What's the problem?
Well, in a real short sentence, it's because it's a highly abortive technology. You take, in order to get one live birth out of IVF, you have to destroy about 5 or 6 embryos. Most people don't know that. This is not common knowledge amongst the lay public. Our new book on the NaproTechnology Revolution points these types of statistics out so that people can start getting a handle on all of this.
Now, how does your NaproTechnology differ from what many of your peers are offering women?
Well, mostly because we look for the underlying problem. The one thing that has literally stopped in the last 50 years, ever since oral contraceptives came out in 1960, is they stopped looking for the cause. And so if you're a young teenager and you have severe menstrual cramps, they put you on the birth control pill instead of finding the cause, which is usually endometriosis. Well, the same thing with in vitro fertilization. When IVF came out in 1978, everybody got excited about it. By everybody, I mean everybody sort of a certain frame of mind, because it jumped over the causes. And for the last 32 years now, they've been jumping over the causes. And we've made no progress in general obstetrics and gynecology or reproductive medicine to the underlying causes, except for the work that we've been doing. There's a few pieces that are done every year, but not very much of all the thousands of papers that are published.
Many couples are so desperate to have a child. They will do just about anything. Why do you think your peers in the profession haven't adopted your methods? Is it because of the time involved? I mean, you obviously have to go through a series of tests, and rather than just writing the script for a pill, you actually have to spend time with the woman and figure out what ails her, right?
Well, you do, but that's also part of the excitement. I mean, as a physician, that's what we're trained to do, is to try to find out what's wrong, and that makes each case very interesting, and you get really into it because of that. But it's not quite fair to say that the medical profession has rejected it yet. The bigger question is, how do we reach them? The medical profession as a whole, as a general rule, I'm talking about reproductive medicine now, doesn't even know we exist. And probably that's our fault in a way because we have sort of hidden our light under a bushel basket. We've been doing this research now since 1976, and we've slowly unraveled this mystery of the menstrual and fertility cycle. And now we were way ahead of where we were then, and now we're able to really talk a lot more about it and get people informed. We've trained almost 400 doctors now, and we have 220 fertility care centers throughout the United States.
And around the world. I mean, you've got centers in Mexico,
world.
Nigeria, England, Poland,
right.
Singapore, Taiwan, Japan. Now, tell me the percentage of successes you've had with couples who've come to you and wanted to have a child.
Yeah. If you look at the infertility side of things, it'll depend on what's wrong with them. If they have blocked fallopian tubes, IVF will give them about a 30% pregnancy rate. We get about a 40% pregnancy rate. It's not a lot better, but it's a little bit better, and it's statistically significant. If you look at endometriosis, their rate's about 30%. Again, our rate's around 60 to 70%. If you look at polycystic ovaries, their rate is about 25% actually, and our rate is almost 80% now. And there's other conditions as well. But on all levels, our pregnancy rates right now are higher per woman than they are in IVF.
And it's obviously a natural technology that works with the body, thus NaproTechnology, rather than external or artificial methods.
Exactly. It's actually a system that works cooperatively with the normal, or in this case, diseased reproductive system.
I want to talk for a moment about some of the news we saw this week. There was a report, the Today Show did a blistering report on Ortho-Evra. This is the so-called contraceptive patch. This puts enormously high amounts of estrogen into a woman's body to keep her infertile. What are the dangers of this that you've seen in your practice?
Well, I don't prescribe Ortho-Evra, so I don't see them in my practice, but I certainly have read about it, and this has been a lawsuit waiting to happen, and it has been in fact happening over the last few years. The contraceptive patch leads to pulmonary emboli, blood clots, strokes, things of that nature, which are the same things that the birth control pills led to as well, because it's the same hormones, or chemicals I should really say, because they're not really natural hormones they're using, but the chemicals are the same and they cause the same problems.
I want to take a caller.
Well, for some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing this information, this very helpful information that Dr. Hilgers is offering us. So when we come back, we'll dive into this more deeply and again look at why the pill is not the answer, real help for your reproductive health. We'll be right back on The Catholic View. Stay tuned. Thanks for joining us on another episode of The Catholic View for Women. Teresa Tomeo here, along with Janet Morana and Astrid Bennett Gutierrez, of course. And we're talking about the pill is not the answer, real help for women's reproductive health. And Janet, for you and me, watching that clip with Dr. Hilgers, as informative as it was and is, all the information, all the great work that he does, it's also frustrating for us because we and so many other women, and even to this day, young girls are told that that's the only answer for them.
Exactly. And that's what the shame of it really is. And I know from our viewer response, from we've dealt in this in previous shows, they've said, what do we tell our daughters when they're having these heavy periods and the doctor wants to put them on the pill? What should we say? What can we do for them? We don't just say, oh, there's nothing, take Midol and deal with it. You want to see that there is an answer. And not only is Dr. Hilgers a wonderful doctor, but do you realize he's a member of the Pontifical Academy for Life over in the Vatican? He goes over there periodically. And he developed this NaproTechnology and NFP really because St. John Paul II years ago said to him, we need to have an answer for couples, not to practice birth control and contraception. We need to help women who are having health problems. He turned to him and said, we need you good Catholic doctors, help us clergy, help the Pope, with an answer. And that's what Dr. Hilgers did. He took almost like a charge from St. John Paul II back then to say, okay, I'll accept the challenge. And they have over 500 doctors as of 2014, when we're taping the show, that have been trained. Over 500 have been trained in this NaproTechnology. Because I know the viewers always say, well, okay, that's great, Dr. Hilgers, we can't get to Omaha. How do we find? You go to his website, Pope Paul the Institute.
Pope Paul VI Institute.
Pope Paul the VI
right.
Institute, and you can get there, you know, where's the closest doctor to you. And you might want to encourage, if you have a good OBGYN, good Catholic OBGYN, encourage them to be in touch with Dr. Hilgers, because they want to keep training more and more doctors. So sometimes we have to be a little bit of ambassadors too.
Yes.
Maybe our good Catholic doctor doesn't know the good work
Yes.
of this NaproTechnology.
And we should mention and clarify that using the birth control pill as a medication for medical reasons, not for contraceptive use, is not sinful. But we see how damaging it is. I mean, we were talking about in the break about the commercials that women see on TV and the magazines. You know, a woman that's happy riding her bicycle saying, I use this birth
Running
control
through the
pill.
park or on a
Yes.
date or smiling.
Or the
yeah.
swimming one.
Or the swimming one with the bathing caps jumping
But-
into the pool.
You know, and you see, wow, it's so attractive. I want to be that girl.
And then
But then
underline,
you, hear it,
you under the tone very
heart
softly.
attack, stroke, cancer, but
Right.
take
Yes.
this pill. You know,
Because
it
we
just
want to take
doesn't
this.
make sense.
Yeah.
And so,
Weight gain, depression.
yes, so people take this pill for a good medical reason, good intentions, but then they might be taking on these more serious, health risks.
Right.
But I think this goes back to what we've been saying a lot during this season, season 4. In the last episode, we were talking with Christina Barber, and she was talking about how all the church teachings make sense. There's a reason, as you said, in clarifying and taking it for medical reasons
Yes.
is not a sin, but obviously using it for artificial contraception and to be,
Is
it
a
would be a sin.
sin.
But the fact that when you go outside of God's plan, things don't work out because we're designed for a certain way, and this is very damaging. And so the church is looking at this from a number of different perspectives.
There's so much mercy there because
Right,
the church understands.
right.
But now, how beautiful that the Holy Spirit inspires these physicians like Dr. Hilgers. This is beautiful what he's done with this NaproTechnology.
Have you ever heard, either of you, in any of the interviews, because I've interviewed him before more than once on my show. He's fantastic, just so interesting to talk to. How he first started to look into this work, in addition to what you mentioned about getting a charge from John Paul II, that when the church was going through all this turmoil with a lot of people in the church that rejected Humanae Vitae of Human
Right.
Life by Pope Paul VI, that he sat down and actually read it and thought, wow, this really makes sense.
Yeah.
It challenged him, but at the same time, he really gave some thought to it and thought, okay, I need to take this seriously. When so
Right.
many others in the medical profession were going in the opposite direction. I thought that was really interesting. Again, this is what we're always trying to do
Right.
on these programs. We don't just sit here and pontificate, no pun intended, by providing these resources.
Right.
But we want you to read them
Yeah.
because they make sense.
Well, you know, in particular, this newest book that Dr. Hilgers wrote, it's called NaproTechnology Revolution. Subtitle, Unleashing the Power in a Woman's Cycle. You know, because that's what he's saying. The woman's body, her cycle is very powerful, and it can be dealt with in a correct way if, in fact, and you know, if you look inside, I just want everyone to understand that this covers more than just heavy periods, all right? So, for example, the whole NaproTechnology, it says real solution to real problems of infertility, of course, menstrual cramps, PMS, okay? Got people suffering from PMS? This is the book
Been
for
there,
you.
done that.
Me too.
Just ask my husband.
Ovarian cysts. Now, many women, you know, have problems with ovarian cysts. Irregular, of course, and abnormal bleeding. Polycystic ovarian disease is able to be treated this way. Of course, some women have a problem with repetitive miscarriage, and through NaproTechnology, they're
Yes.
able to help women.
What about fibroid tumors? Does he
Fibroid
mention it?
tumors is
Yeah.
another one. Yep, it's on
That's
the
a big
list.
problem. Yeah.
Postpartum depression. Again, what do? They give hormone treatments for postpartum depression, and Dr. Hilgers is saying, no, there's a more natural way of dealing with that. It's here in this book. And of course, prematurity prevention, hormone abnormalities, chronic discharges, and of course, natural family planning is, you know, the other big thing that it has. And he wrote this book that both medical professionals and the average layperson could kind of read and go through, and there's diagrams and information and all that. I highly recommend it. I'm still reading through it. I'm really amazed by how much information is in this book. And it would really help. You know what you want to do? If you have a good Catholic OBGYN, I think this book would be a good gift.
Absolutely.
Christmas gift. Because then it's going to spark his interest, and then maybe he would want to get trained in this methodology. Because I'm telling you, first of all, the pharmaceutical companies won't like them because they'll stop scripting out the pill.
And Janet,
But women's health will be
yeah.
really improved in a good way.
Even with the organic movement about not taking in hormones and all this stuff with the green movement,
Right.
I mean, a doctor who would understand that would, even if they're not Catholic, would appreciate this, and women would be blessed by that knowledge.
Well, and then another fun thing I found, because I was doing this research with Hilgers, is our good friends at Couple Lead put out this book,
Oh, yeah.
Fertility, Cycles, and Nutrition. So like you just said, Astrid, the green people, yes, this shows them more green people. The green people, the tree huggers. Well, this shows them
Environmentalists.
Environmentalists, yes. Well, this shows a more natural way to, again, certain
Which is
foods
not a
you
bad
eat-
thing.
Not a bad thing.
Right.
But, you know, certain foods you can eat that can help with all these problems from infertility to all the female problems we were mentioning. Sometimes certain foods that you eat will help those problems.
Right.
So it's just another good resource, and I think this is wonderful because it's a more natural way. And notice, God's way is a natural way. It's the good way for us. See, because God has our best interests at heart.
Yes,
Just
yes.
following His teachings. You know, people always think, like they've said in these other episodes, that it's a big no, but it's really a big yes, and it's for our benefit.
Yes, and with the birth control pill, you know, young women take it for acne and for different problems. And the thing is, even though it's not bad for that, obviously we see different health risks, but now we have an alternative. But another risk too with the birth control pill is a young girl knowing that she's on the pill might be more, you know, prone to sexual activity where she
Or
would not
pressure
otherwise.
if someone else
or
finds out about
pressure.
it that she, yeah.
Absolutely. So there's
Yeah.
many risks, and also with infertility, people resort to IVF and different things that we know are against life. Now they have this healthy alternative that is effective.
That's right.
Getting back to the issue of the environmentalists, this actually, as you mentioned, Astrid, has brought a lot of those people into the church because they're very concerned about the environment. And all of this evidence out there showing that so many people being on all kinds of steroids and different hormones, that it actually does harm the environment, harming our drinking water, things that are happening to the fish. I mean, it's
Fish are
really
being-
interesting if you stop and you really look at this stuff. What I find interesting of someone who says that they're really very natural and they're environmentalists, but then they're on the pill, and I'm like, well, that makes absolutely no sense. So you believe in all this natural remedies, and yet you're putting these terrible things into your body. So when people stop and think about that actually, even if they're not Catholic, because there are a lot of Protestant brothers and sisters who've actually come into the church because of NFP and because of the other pro-life teachings.
Right.
But it's fascinating to me the pressure that must be on people in the medical community because it seems just so fully accepted everywhere, with the exception of these pockets of doctors like Hilgers and others around the country. Why do you think that is? Is it because of the money with the pharmaceutical companies? What do you think?
Well, yeah, because people don't realize, first of all, most doctors have a pharmaceutical, like a representative salesperson that comes into their office on a regular basis, and they give them all kinds of free samples and stuff, and you know, and it just seems to be, and of course the American OBGYN Association, I mean, they endorse the pill like it's a good thing, like it's no big deal.
And we're living in a culture of death, you know, society where abortion is legal, where, you know, if the birth control pill doesn't work, we have abortion, and you know, we need the pill because people want to have, you know, sex outside of the boundaries that God created. So I think it's just a culture that has accepted the pill and this lifestyle and the lies of the culture of death. And unfortunately, it has permeated our medical society. So there are very few doctors that will give an alternative, and it will cost them.
But they're
It will
not
cost
even,
them
is this
money.
even discussed in the medical schools? This is what Dr. Hilgers told me. Are these alternatives even discussed in the medical schools
they're
anymore
not.
at all?
They're not. And see, that's what he said. What's happened is they've been trained in a bad way in medical school from the get-go. They've been taught at this point to treat all the problems we've discussed so far, that the pill is the answer. See, that's the problem. And so therefore, to get doctors who want to flip and look into NaproTechnology, it's harder because they were ingrained with this bad philosophy from medical school forward. And that's why really our viewers can be an ambassador of this good message. Help Dr. Hilgers. He wants to train more doctors in NaproTechnology. Like I said, there's about 500 nationwide right now, but I know he'd love to double or triple that number. I mean, that's a small number when you think how many doctors we have in the United States. So that's really a charge here to our viewers. get this book and give it to a doctor and get them in touch with Dr. Hilgers. You know, if you're starting with, if he's a good doctor and maybe he's just a little misguided. Because we've had, you know, even in our Defending Life program, we've had doctors on our program who used to prescribe the pill, but had a conversion and realized that the church's teaching was right, and they became NFP only, no more birth control pill, and guess what happened? Their practices doubled and tripled. It didn't diminish, like most people think. Oh,
Well, even
you
at
know,
first, if they had a problem, they eventually, because they were offering
That's right.
real alternatives. All right, let's go over our homework because we have
all
quite a
right,
bit to get through.
homework. Well, first of all, we have, this is available at Priest for Life. This is our Humana Vitae study guide. It has the encyclical in it, and it's a study guide of questions, and you can go to prolifeproducts.org to order that study guide. Also, too, go to paulthe6.com, his Dr. Hilgers' website, and you can see there where the doctors are and plenty more resources. We didn't get to it in this program, but I also want to point out Bishop Conley wrote a beautiful letter, The Language
Of Lincoln,
of
Nebraska.
Love.
It's beautiful. It's about
Beautiful.
artificial contraception.
It's about
the dangers of
artificial
it, and he talks about the
contraception.
marital relationship, and you can find it on the diocesan website, but we also have a link to it
We
on
have the
ours,
link
right?
on our website. And of course, reading this book, The NaproTechnology Revolution by Dr. Hilgers, and we'll have information how to order that on our website. And finally, my book, and both Recall Abortion and Teresa's book, Extreme Makeover, both have chapters on the damage of the pill.
Yeah. Yes.
These are available from the religious catalog, because sometimes you can't get women to not take the pill unless you show them how bad it is
That's
for
right.
them.
Well, good discussion, ladies. I know, Astrid, you also have some other information that you wanted to share.
Two great
Real quick.
resources. A secular one, I use NFP.com, will tell you all the methods of natural family planning, including Creighton model, which is what Dr. Hilgers has, designed. And then One More Soul, which is an NFP only directory for instructors to learn how to do natural family planning, which is the church's way of regulating birth.
All right, well, you have your homework assignments. We hope you go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com, and also tune in next time to our show, The Catholic View. See you then.